Hello, everyone, and thank you very much for joining us for tonight's presentation of OTF Connects, Digital Harassment, Social Networking, and Online Safety with Shauna Burns and Ryan Brawl. And Shauna isn't able to be with us tonight because of a family emergency that arose, but hopefully everything's okay. And Ryan will be the one who is taking us through tonight's presentation, and we're very grateful that you've all joined us this evening, especially on Pink Shirt Day today. I thought that actually ended up being coincidental, I think, when the session was scheduled, unless Shanna had something up her sleeve there. But certainly this is a very current and relevant issue that's becoming more and more apparent that the more we all know, the better positioned our students and our own children will be to navigate safely through the online world. So, having said that, I'd also like to say on behalf of Syria Skirhan, who is the administrator and facilitator of the OTF Connects program, how grateful that she is and OTF is that you're giving up some of your own time to further your learning in this particular area. So, Ryan, please do take it from here and introduce yourself a little bit. Ryan, you'll do a much better job of that than I could. Tell us a little bit about yourself in the 4th R and your role there, and then we'll be able to move ahead with the presentation. I'll just advance the slide here so we capture our little map of Ontario showing where we're all located this evening, and then I'll push it on to there. Over to you, Ryan.
Okay, thank you, Louise, and thank you to everybody for joining us tonight. My name's Ryan Brawl. As Louise said, I'm a PhD candidate, just finishing up a PhD in sociology at the University of Western Ontario, so I'm here in London tonight. My research area is cyberbullying and youth technology use, so this is certainly something that I'm quite passionate about and interested in, so I'm always happy to talk about it, so I'm glad to have the opportunity to talk with all of you tonight. I am also a research associate at the 4th R, which is within the CAMH Center for Prevention Science, the Center for Addiction and Mental Health Center for Prevention Science. CAMH is the largest mental health teaching hospital in Canada, and within that, we do a lot of work in the area of safe schools and healthy youth relationships. So the 4th R stands for relationships, and our belief here is that we can teach relationship skills, and we should teach relationship skills in the same way that we teach, yes, and that's our website there. We believe that we can and should teach relationship skills in the same way that we teach the traditional 3 R's, reading, writing, and arithmetic. You know, we focus a lot on those in schools and in our homes, but we don't necessarily focus as much on teaching young people about relationships, and even less so, I think, on teaching young people about healthy relationships in the digital world. So that's where we'll be focusing tonight, and we'll be exploring issues around cyberbullying and safe social networking. So thanks again for joining us. So in this webinar, as I said, we're going to be examining cyberbullying, safe social networking, and of course all of that occurs within the context of youth technology use. So we'll start off by examining issues around youth technology use, both the positive and the negative. It's easy when we're talking about these types of things to focus on the negative and to leave feeling a little bit depressed and like there's not a lot of hope, but there is, and there are wonderful things to technology, and it's a fantastic tool, so we're going to touch on those as well, but most of the webinar probably will be somewhat negative. We'll explore what cyberbullying is, which I know you all know as teachers, but just to reiterate that fact and make sure we're on the same page. And also how new media, so things like the internet, cell phones, where the communication is 2 ways, can be used to harass others. And then towards the end of the webinar, we'll provide several strategies that can be used to prevent and respond to cyberbullying, and more generally help keep young people safe in the digital world. So you are certainly teaching Generation M. The current generation has been called Generation M. Sometimes it's called the Net Generation, the Me Generation. But Generation M relates to media. And these young people today are absolutely growing up in a media-saturated environment. And as I said, media is fantastic. It also comes with its problems as well. And certainly it opens up a whole new world of issues and considerations for teachers. So these are some of the things that we'll talk about tonight. It's actually higher than that now, believe it or not. We're going to mention that, but it's quite a lot of time being connected. We always like to start with this did you know, because I think it puts things in context a little bit in terms of media use. So, did you know the populations, the combined populations of China, India, and the United States, which are the three most populous countries in the world, is 2.92 billion people. So, you know, approaching 3 billion people. There are a lot of people in these three countries. What's interesting is that the number of unique visitors to Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook every single month, those three websites get 2.96 billion different people going to them. So that's more than the three most populous countries in the world. What we mean by unique visitors is that these are different people who are going to who are visiting these websites. Now, it's possible that the same person might visit Facebook and Twitter, for example, but Facebook itself has more than 1 billion active users, so different people who sign in every single month. And what's even more astounding is that none of these websites existed 10 years ago. So the issues that we're talking about around social media and whatnot are new. They didn't exist a decade ago. These are issues that teachers didn't have to face just 10 years ago. So in 10 years, these websites have become absolutely massive and just incredibly popular. What do you mean by do companies count?
I meant about the unique visitors because I know each of those social networking sites is certainly more and more populated by advertisers and companies, developing their online presence as well. But those numbers are just massive to even consider. But I know that the vast majority of those will be individual people.
Yeah, that's a very good point. These are different individuals who log in at least once per month. They could be companies, absolutely. We don't have the statistics to be able to separate out whether or not it's a company or an individual. As long as one person from that company logs in once a month, they could be counted in that. But either way, those are just staggering numbers, and they continue to climb. This is one of the most updated slides that we have in here. Pretty much every time we do a presentation, we have to update this slide because the numbers change and they grow so rapidly. It's just amazing how quickly these things are becoming so popular. So Drew Altman, he's the president and CEO of the Kaiser Family Foundation. The Kaiser Family Foundation does a lot of work in the area of media violence and youth technology use. And he said the amount of time young people spend with media has grown to where it's even more than a full-time work week. When children are spending this much time doing anything, we need to understand how it's affecting them for good and for bad. And we absolutely do. You know, as I said, there are wonderful things to media. There are also some problematic issues with media. But by the time the average young person has graduated from high school, they will have spent 15,000 hours with media compared to only 12,000 hours in the classroom. So they are spending a lot of time with media, and we do need to understand how it's affecting them. So let's look at some issues around youth technology use. So not surprisingly to most adults, and certainly if you're a parent, I'm sure you are well aware of this, but young people spend a lot of time engaged with media. On average, young people use about 9 hours of technology per day. This includes time spent on the computer, watching television, listening to music, playing video games, and so forth. So I suppose that may be where the distinction between the 9 and the 6 comes in that was mentioned earlier. These aren't necessarily all connected to the internet. But this number doesn't account for multitasking. So it doesn't take into account people who are watching television while chatting on the computer, for example. If we separated out each of these various activities, young people would spend more than 11.5 hours per day with media. In addition, this figure doesn't include texting, and the average young person spends about 1.5 hours per day texting. So when you add up all their time with technology, plus the time they're in school, plus the time that they're sleeping, there's not a lot of time for them to be doing really anything else. Almost all Canadian teenagers now have access to the internet, and this access is often via portable devices. In fact, laptops, tablet computers, so things like iPads or playbooks, those types of tablet computers, and cell phones are the most common ways to connect to the internet now for all students. And as technology becomes ever more portable, it also becomes much more difficult for adults, including teachers, to monitor. It's no longer just monitoring students' technology use. Of course, when they're in the computer lab, now they're always connected to these devices, and it certainly raises new challenges for teachers. By grade 11, almost all students have their own cell phone, and these are usually purchased by a parent. However, half of grade 7 students and 1/4 of grade 4 students also have their own cell phones. So really high numbers, especially, and even among younger students. These rates of cell phone ownerships represent extraordinary increases from 2005, when only 6% of students in grade 4 and 46% of students in grade 11 had their own cell phone. And of course, most of these cell phones are smartphones, so they are connected to the internet. What's interesting is that cell phone ownership is also affecting sleep patterns. So you may have noticed your students are becoming, or are seeming, more and more tired in the morning, and it could be because of their cell phone use. 39% of students who have cell phones sleep with their phone in case they receive a call or message during the night. And this trend of sleeping with one's phone actually increases to more than half of grade 11 students. But what I find really alarming is that 20% of grade 4 students sleep with their cell phone in case they get a call or message during the night. And lastly, young people's perceptions of the risks associated with technology seem to diminish over time rather than strengthen. So there was a 2013, so a very recent survey of almost 5,500 Canadian students in grades 4 through 11, and they were asked whether or not they can be hurt by talking to strangers online. Although 80% of 8th grade students said yes, only 63% of 11th grade students said yes. So what I think this tells us is that, and we certainly understand that time is often short in the classroom, but if the opportunity to mention electronic safety presents itself, we certainly encourage teachers to take advantage of that, even with older students who we might assume already know better. But we're seeing that that might taper off a little bit as they age. So perhaps rather than calling them the me generation, it might make more sense to call the current generation of young people Generation Social. The current generation, currently more than 80% of 12 to 17-year-olds have at least one social networking profile, and 22% of teens check their social networks at least 10 times per day. What's interesting as well is that 32% of students in grades 4 to 6 have a Facebook account, even though Facebook's terms of service, so their rules, require members to be at least 13 years old to have an account. Now there's no age verification software or anything like that, so all one has to do is say that they're 13 and they're eligible for an account. And many young people are signing up. By grade 11, 95% of Canadian teens have a Facebook account, and YouTube is Canadian youth's favorite website across all grades and genders. In addition, 63% of teens send at least one text message daily, and only 1% of teens send less than one message per week. The average 12 to 17-year-old teenager will also send about 5,000 messages per month. And not surprisingly, older teenage girls, so those between about 14 and 17 years of age, are the most prolific texters. Contrary to common belief, young people are not talking to strangers online, though. Instead, almost all of the time that young people spend talking to others online is spent talking to their real-world friends. For many young people, therefore, hanging out with friends and developing a sense of identity online is very commonplace. Everything that's posted, linked, liked, uploaded, tweeted, pinned, and so forth has all been carefully constructed by youth to create their identity or what they want others to perceive them to be. Recent research shows that young people are also becoming increasingly dependent on the feedback they receive from their socially networked peers. And it also shows that while youth love posting about themselves, they have unfriended others who post too many selfies, so pictures of themselves, or updates. The problem is that with all the identity creation online, the viewers or the consumers forget that what they are seeing on someone else's Facebook page is a construction as well. So all too often, young people see somebody else posting pictures that show happiness, fun, excitement, etc., and they want to have the same and think that there's something wrong with their own lives when they aren't experiencing the same situations. It's easily forgotten that people who only post things they want others, it's easily forgotten that people only post the things they want others to see or know, not the stuff that they don't want them to see. So that's where the social construction comes in. So really what this becomes about is microfame, and the concept of microfame hinges on viralness, or things becoming viral. Because it's not just what is produced and presented online, but it also encompasses the audience reaction and their ongoing response to what's posted. So, if you post a picture, you want to see how many likes or comments you can get. If you post a video, you want to see how many hits or shares you get, how many people search for it. So essentially, microfame relates to when both the subject and their fans or their viewers participate directly into the creation of a celebrity. So it extends beyond the creator's body of work to include a community that leaves comments, publishes reaction videos, sends emails, and builds internet reputations, all with links. So it certainly is a very social generation. So how do youth use social media then? I know there's a lot on this slide, but for many adults, social media is somewhat of a mystery. There's something in the research called the digital generation gap, which basically refers to the idea that young people tend to understand technology better than adults do. And what I want to reiterate here is that not all technology is bad. You know, technology now allows youth to share, express, and talk in ways that simply weren't possible even just a few years ago. You know, young people can explore and they can form identities and they can become civically engaged and they can become active producers of knowledge rather than passive recipients of content in so many ways now, using things like YouTube or Flickr or wikis where they can create content. You know, they can stay in contact with others so much easier than in the past. So certainly not all technology is bad. And yes, some young people do make poor choices when using technology, but the sky definitely is not falling. And many youth have had profoundly positive experiences online. Almost 40% of Canadian teens have used social networking tools to share a story or piece of artwork they have created themselves, and the internet can be a powerful, powerful means of encouraging social engagement. For example, half of students in all grades have gone online to find information about news and current events, and half of students in grades 7 to 11 have sent links to news stories to other people. 75% of teens have used the internet to find information about news, health issues, and relationships, and 35% of teens have joined or supported an activist group online like Students Against Bullies or Free the Children. You know, today, for example, I was on Twitter earlier, and you know, Pink Shirt Day was everywhere. So it can be such a powerful means of, you know, sharing information and spreading awareness about social causes. Many young people also recognize the value of disconnecting from technology. For example, 94% of all students have chosen to unplug in order to do other things like spend more time with friends and family, enjoy quiet time by themselves, or go outside. And I was quite impressed by this next statistic. But among 13 to 17-year-olds, their favorite way to communicate with friends is actually in person. And when they were asked why this is the case, 38% of teens said it's more fun, and 29% said they can understand what people mean better. And isn't that true? I mean, it's so difficult to understand, you know, sarcasm or you know, voice pitch or what people actually mean online when we don't have all those other signals and the body language that helps us understand our social interactions. Of course, at the same time, technology can open up a whole new world of possibilities, but it can also create a lot of problems. So again, we know that you know what bullying is. I have absolutely no doubt that all teachers know what bullying is, but we just think that it does deserve repeating. You know, as you know, bullying is characterized by these three things. Bullying has to be repeated in nature, which means that one incident isn't considered bullying. It has to be intentional, so somebody has to know what they're doing to harm the other person, and it exists within the context of a power imbalance. So that might be something like a physical size disadvantage. It could relate to social class. It could relate to technological proficiency. Some of these issues do become a little bit muddied when we're speaking about cyberbullying and technology, and I'm not sure there's a consensus yet on how these necessarily apply to cyberbullying. Because, for example, if I post one mean message about somebody, but 1,000 people see it, or 1,000 people forward that message on, is that repeated? I think I would say yes, but there isn't a consensus yet. I also point these issues out because not a lot of parents know what bullying actually is. In my own research, I look at how various stakeholders respond to cyberbullying once they become aware of it, so how teachers, parents, and police officers actually respond to cyberbullying. And what's clear is that parents often aren't quite sure what bullying is, and they might bring an issue to the school that really isn't bullying. So, if something like that comes up, maybe it's worth reiterating these points to parents to help them understand as well. Certainly for many parents or for many teachers these days, I absolutely understand that it's often or a large part of your job involves educating parents as well as educating students. And then this is the Ontario Ministry of Education's definition of cyberbullying. They define cyberbullying as aggressive and repeated behavior committed by electronic means within the context of a relationship where a power imbalance exists and where behavior causes or should be known to cause harm, fear, or distress to another individual or creates a negative environment at school for another individual. So this is very similar to our definition of bullying, with the 3 key characteristics included. But it also adds that dimension at the very end there, where it creates a negative environment for somebody at school. So bullying or cyberbullying may not happen at school, but if it affects the student at school in any way, as you know, it does become a school issue. So these are just a few facts about cyberbullying. At least 1 in 5 students is the victim of cyberbullying, but this might be as high as 4 out of 5 students. Research in this area is still new and it's developing, but what is becoming clear is that a large proportion anyways of students are cyberbullied. And most students say that they either know somebody who is being cyberbullied or they have witnessed it themselves. Girls are more likely to be cyberbullied than boys. And cyberbullying often relates to the female student's appearance or to her perceived or real sexual prowess. LGBT students are much more likely to be both bullied and cyberbullied than other students. And what makes cyberbullying difficult and often hidden for teachers, parents, and other adults is that fewer than half of all victims tell an adult. Young people who are cyberbullied experience real offline consequences of those online interactions. And I really want to stress that point. Even as adults, I think we can often forget that there's a real person behind the screen, on the other side of that email or text message that we're sending, and certainly young people forget that as well. But it is becoming increasingly clear that there are offline consequences to these online behaviors. So young people who are cyberbullied are often angry, frustrated, and sad. They're 3 times more likely than young people who aren't bullied to be anxious or depressed. What's very scary is that they're 2 times more likely than young people who haven't been bullied to have actually attempted suicide. So not to have thought about suicide, but to actually have attempted it. And that's a scary number. And they're also at a much higher risk for school problems, including truancy, trouble concentrating, lower grades, suspensions, detentions, those types of things, and also for substance use. And young people who are cyberbullied are often involved in traditional bullying in some way, shape, or form. So either as a bully offline who also bullies somebody online. It could be somebody who's bullied or a victim offline, but who's technologically proficient and might try to get back at their bully online. There is quite a bit of interaction between the various methods of bullying. So I'd like to take a moment just to talk about a few of the ways that cyberbullying does actually occur, and also just point out some potential safety issues with various types of digital communications, so that if you hear your students talking about these things, you might be able to point out ways to use them more safely. Certainly cyberbullying occurs over text messaging and cell phones, just sending mean messages to one another. Now that these phones are almost always connected to the internet in one way or another, and a lot of schools are becoming wireless, where they have Wi-Fi, and students are able to access the internet through that. They don't necessarily need an internet plan. And I mean, many places have Wi-Fi as well. McDonald's, malls, parks sometimes have it, so it's quite common. But that allows students to then go on to something like Facebook or email students to bully them. It's just so common through cell phones now. I'll come back to social or to webcams, but social networking, again, just because of its massive user base and its importance in young people's lives, is a quite common place for cyberbullying to occur. If you've watched a YouTube video and looked at some of the comments underneath videos, those are good examples of ways that cyberbullying can occur. There are very rarely positive comments. People just say some terribly hateful things because they can. They feel they're anonymous, and that emboldens people, and they'll say things they probably wouldn't say in person. Same thing, there's a lot of meanness on Facebook. In one of the examples of a parent that I spoke to for my research, her daughter had a Facebook account, and she wasn't the most popular person at her school, and she had a couple of learning disabilities, and she was a little bit behind some of the other students in her class, but other students created a fake boyfriend for her online, and she just really wanted to have a friend and wanted to be liked and loved, and she thought she was dating this fake boy or this boy that she thought was real, and it turned out that other students had just created the account, and they kind of egged her on and led her on for a little while, and eventually the fake boyfriend broke up with her and just absolutely crushed the girl. But there is just terribly mean things like that happening on Facebook all the time. One of the ways of making Facebook safer is to use privacy settings properly, and restricting who can see what you're posting and who has access to your photographs and who's friends with you and things like that. We always encourage, or we always say that online friends should be offline friends. There's no need to have people on your Facebook account who you don't know. But many young people believe that it's a competition and they want to have the most friends, and that can certainly lead to problems as well. Hate blogs are another area where cyberbullying occurs, and these are exactly what they sound like. They're blogs that are set up just to bash somebody, to post mean and hateful and hurtful content about somebody else. Sometimes it's one individual, sometimes it's a group of individuals who are contributing to these blogs, but they're incredibly hurtful and just terrible. Webcams are becoming a newer way of both cyberbullying somebody and of difficult or unsafe social networking. Oh yes, absolutely, Louise. Hating people is very cool right now. Mainstream media certainly does not help. But webcams have kind of reemerged as a way of bullying people. Now, a lot of webcam programs, most probably, allow you to take screenshots of the other person who you're chatting with without them knowing that you've taken a screenshot of them. So, these can catch people in compromising positions or doing things that they, don't want to have recorded. And then those can be used to extort people or, bully them or just cause a lot of problems. Another issue is that hackers are sometimes able to access webcams and turn them on remotely. So there's been a few very scary cases recently, in fact, where people are hacking into usually young girls or teenage girls' webcams if they have a laptop or a computer in their bedroom, and they're turning on those webcams remotely without the girl knowing that her camera's on, and they're recording her, changing or getting out of the shower or things like that, really creepy things and really scary things. So what's recommended is that if young people do have a computer in their room with a webcam in it, it's recommended that if it's not in use, they put a post-it note or a piece of tape over it or something like that. Close the lid of the laptop, because then, of course, the webcam won't be pointed at the owner. Or at the very least, if you're changing, throw a t-shirt over the webcam or something like that. It's not enough to just know or to just not see the light on the webcam, because if hackers are proficient enough and skilled enough to be able to take control of your webcam, they're also able to turn that light off. So these are very rather scary issues. But there's certainly a few of the ways that digital communications can become unsafe. So where does cyberbullying occur? Well, the reality is that cyberbullying occurs everywhere. It occurs on social media, on cell phones, through email, any way that young people can communicate with one another. There's the possibility of cyberbullying. Cyberbullying happens in the most urban areas. It happens absolutely in Toronto, in London, in Calgary. And it happens in the most remote or rural regions as well. It happens in northern Canada, in the Northwest Territories, in Nunavut, where there's, very, very tiny populations in very remote communities, and we do work in these areas, and we hear constantly that cyberbullying is such a big issue there. So it happens everywhere, and really, if we think it's not happening in our neighborhood or our, community or our school, we're just not. We're just, almost being foolish about it. It does happen there. It happens everywhere. Because cyberbullying is often linked to sexting, I'd like to just touch on that for a brief moment, because it is potentially a very serious issue, and the two do go hand in hand. By sexting, what we mean is the use of communication technology to send or receive sexually explicit messages or photos. Okay, 28% of teens have sent a naked picture of themselves to somebody else, 15% have received one, and 33% know someone involved in sexting. So this is common. It happens quite a bit. What's rather scary is that 70% of teen girls have been asked to send a sext of themselves to somebody else. And almost all of these girls were bothered by this request. Really, if this happened in any other avenue, or if this happened at work, this would be considered sexual harassment. But because it happens online or through texting, often with young people, it's kind of just brushed off as sexting. But it's a very serious issue. Sometimes sexting occurs because it's considered a form of safe sex. So sometimes, usually a teenage girl will send a picture of herself to her boyfriend or girlfriend because she's being pressured to have sex and she doesn't want to, she doesn't feel comfortable yet. So this is a way of kind of buying herself some more time. Another way it's considered safe sex is through that little ghost icon in the bottom left of your corner. That's an app, a very popular app called Snapchat. And with Snapchat, what it does is it allows one person to take a picture of themselves and send it to another person, and the recipient can only see that picture for a maximum of 10 seconds. The sender is able to choose how long the recipient can see the picture for, and then it disappears. However, so young people or girls will often do this thinking that, they can see it for 10 seconds and then it's gone, and they think that they're safe. What's unfortunate, though, is that it takes half a second maybe, to take a screen capture of that image. I have an iPhone, so if you have an iPhone, you push the power button on the top and the home button, the little circle button with a square at the bottom of the phone at the same time, and that takes a screen capture, and other cell phones have the same features. But then once that screen capture is taken, that picture is available for forever. It's there, and it's there for that recipient to forward on to other people to distribute as they see fit. And that's scary. It's certainly not a safe app whatsoever. It's also become somewhat normalized, sexting has. I'm not sure what grades you teach. If you teach high school, it's not uncommon at all to be walking through the halls and hear students talking about sending nudes to one another. It happens all the time. When we're presenting in schools, I can't tell you how many times we've been in a school at the moment that they've been dealing with a sexting issue. There have been a few times where students have been in the office with police officers because this has been ongoing. It's such a normal part of their lives now. But there are very real consequences with sexting. Sexting is associated with many other problem behaviors, like having started dating younger, having had sex, having had multiple sex partners at an earlier age, and it's also associated with alcohol and drug use before sex, which is very risky. So there are very serious consequences, but maybe the most serious is that it is considered child pornography. And there are quite a few cases where young people have been charged with child pornography-related crimes because they were sexting. Having the picture is the possession of child pornography. Forwarding it on to somebody else is the distribution of child pornography, and taking the picture is the creation of child pornography. In the States especially, there are a lot of 18, 19-year-olds who are registered sex offenders, which just absolutely destroys your chances of employment in the future, and it's really not a good thing to have on your record. And they're registered sex offenders because they've been charged with child pornography because their girlfriend sent them a picture, and when they broke up, that boy forwarded it on to all his friends, and it's just not worth it. So sexting and cyberbullying are often linked, and there are some very serious consequences to sexting. Related to that, you may have heard the story of Amanda Todd. Her name's become, really synonymous with cyberbullying. When Amanda was in grade 7, she moved in with her father, and she was using online video chats to meet new people. During one such chat, a stranger convinced her to flash him, and unbeknownst to Amanda, the stranger took a screen capture of this and then used that image to torment Amanda for several years. He created multiple Facebook accounts using the image as his profile picture, and he befriended her peers and her family so that they would also see that image of her. As a result of this, Amanda was ruthlessly bullied online and offline, and she became severely depressed. She switched schools several times, but each time she switched schools, the man would resurface and he'd spread the picture again. What was quite famous about Amanda's case was in September 2012, she posted a 9-minute video of herself on YouTube entitled "My Story," struggling with bullying, suicide, and self-harm, in which she used a series of flashcards to tell the world her story. The video went viral quite quickly, and as of this month, actually, as of February 2014, it's been viewed by almost 9 million people. Sadly, however, on October 10th, 2012, at just 15 years of age, Amanda took her own life to escape the torment that she was experiencing. Shortly after Amanda's death, Carol Todd, Amanda's mother, said, "What goes on the internet stays on the internet. It's there forever and it damages lives." And this is important for all of us to keep in mind, but especially our children and our students. Once something's posted online, we can never get it back. It's simply too easy to copy, forward, or save anything from the internet. Even if the original image or post is deleted, many, many others may exist. Before we do anything online, we have to ask ourselves, am I comfortable with everybody in the world seeing this? Amanda's video was taken down by YouTube after her suicide, but Amanda's mom actually asked them to put it back up, which they have done, so that her story could continue to be shared with other people. It's a powerful video. If you haven't seen it, it's definitely worth watching. So just a couple more facts about cyberbullying and bullying more generally. Only 25% of students report that teachers intervene in bullying situations, but 71% of teachers believe they always intervene. This statistic can be difficult to take, and I do not think whatsoever that it's that teachers aren't doing anything about bullying. In fact, there's not a teacher that I've interviewed or spoken to that doesn't take bullying seriously and isn't doing everything possible to stop bullying in their school. What I think this tells us is that bullying is hidden, and cyberbullying is even more hidden than other forms of bullying. There's absolutely no advantage to a bullying another student in the open where teachers and adults can see. They know that they would get in trouble. They know that bullying is wrong, so they do their best to hide it. And that makes it very difficult for adults to intervene. The average bullying episode lasts for 37 seconds, so they tend not to be long, but in that 37 seconds, a lot of harm can happen. In fact, there it is. Teachers only see 1 in 25 bullying incidents. So teachers see 4% of bullying incidents. So that, again, goes to show just how hidden it is. And then on top of that, as was mentioned already, most victims don't report bullying to an adult. It's very uncommon. Fewer than half report cyberbullying to an adult. when they do, they're most likely to tell a parent and then a teacher. But students need adult intervention. The power differential is just too great to overcome on their own. They need the help of an adult to overcome that power differential. So that begs the question then, what can teachers do? Well, fortunately, just in being here, you're doing something really phenomenal, and hopefully you can spread some of the resources and information that we're about to provide to some of your colleagues. And I'm sure by being on here and listening to this, you're already doing a lot in your schools. So we'd just like to provide a few other possibilities or options for things that teachers can do to help deal with cyberbullying or reduce cyberbullying, and certainly reduce the harm of it. It's clear that adult leadership is essential for change. We can, as adults, inadvertently promote victimization and harassment through our actions, or we can discourage it in our everyday interactions. Children and students learn by watching the adults that are around them. So if we always yell to or scream or get in shouting matches to resolve differences, then young people come to believe that that's an effective and appropriate way of resolving differences. If we, are calm, and if we, speak to the other person and express our disappointments and our feelings and really talk it out with them, that's how young people believe that they ought to solve their differences. So what we do and what we say really matters. Adults are absolutely essential in promoting healthy relationships. That's a core component of the 4th R programs. We believe that teachers and facilitators, through their own behavior and their interactions, really can promote healthy relationships and teach young people, how to behave appropriately with others. So what are some of the things that educators can look for? These are a few of the signs that a child may be being cyberbullied or that they may be cyberbullying others. Because as was just discussed, teachers often aren't told about bullying, and they often aren't able to witness it themselves. So these are some signs to watch for that might indicate that cyberbullying is occurring. A child might be the victim if you notice that they suddenly stop using computers or cell phones, if they appear nervous or anxious when an email or text message appears, if they don't want to be at school, especially if they've previously enjoyed school, if they appear angry, frustrated, or depressed after using a cell phone or computer, or if they become abnormally withdrawn from friends, family members, and educators. Signs that a child may be being or may be bullying others include them quickly switching computer screens or closing windows or programs when you walk by, if they get unusually upset or angry if their computer or cell phone privileges are restricted, avoiding discussions about what they are doing on their computer or cell phone, or if they appear to be using multiple accounts. Those are signs that bullying may be occurring. We also want to emphasize the point that you don't have to do everything yourself, and you don't have to have all of the answers. These are complicated issues, and sometimes there is a lot of pressure on teachers to have all the answers, but you don't have to. Speak to others at your school, other teachers or school administrators. If you become aware of an incident and you're not sure how to proceed, or if you think bullying may be occurring but you're not quite sure, maybe somebody else at your school has dealt with a similar issue and maybe they can offer some guidance. Consider informing the parents that are involved, or of the children involved. Policies about this might vary by school or district, so ensure that you, of course, follow your schools or your board policies. But maybe all it all it requires is a chat with parents to make them aware of it, or to, seek their support in ending the bullying. And seek advice from your school resource officer, especially if you have one at your school regularly who you know. They're a great source of information on cyberbullying and on unsafe digital communications. They, to some extent, are experts in these areas. Many of them present on these topics for parents. If you're not sure whether a crime was occurred, certainly mention it to them and seek their advice on how to proceed. Cyberbullying can transcend into criminal activity. It's illegal to threaten people. It's illegal to harass people. And, sometimes cyberbullying does reach those levels. So seek support from others around you, and don't feel like you have to have all of the answers yourself. So just a few more resources briefly for teachers, and we've used the acronym PROTECT to help make this a little bit easier to remember. So we'll work through each of these letters in PROTECT one at a time here. So the P stands for Practice Safe Social Networking. So these are some things that, some pieces of advice that you might offer students to help keep them safe online. First is avoid using real names whenever possible. Using, first name, middle name, or some type of pseudonym is a good idea to limit what people can see about you online, especially among young people, where these, types of negative interactions may be more common. If it makes it more difficult for a bully to find you, that's a good thing. Do not post your personal information online, which school you go to, what your interests are, what city you live in. All of these things make it easier for people who are looking to harm young people to find them. We really encourage young people and adults alike not to provide digital communication or information online. So don't post cell phone numbers, don't post email addresses online. Your friends and family already have that information. They know how to get in touch with you. It doesn't need to be on a social networking site. Make sure your profile itself is secure. You've used your privacy settings wisely. Facebook's recommended settings aren't all that effective, so it's a good idea to customize those. Avoid posting pictures or videos whenever possible. If they are posted, restrict who can see them and share them only with the people that you want to see. The reason to avoid doing this is because, again, once it's out there, and we really can't control who has access to pictures or videos after we've posted them. Online friends absolutely should be offline friends. Young people should also monitor their friends' profiles, and if they see something posted that they don't agree with or don't like, they should ask their friend to remove that content. We also always want to encourage young people to use netiquette, which is essentially using their manners and behaving appropriately and ethically online. The R stands for research and resources. These are a few websites where you can get more information. There are several there about internet safety. Kids in the Know is a wonderful website created by kids for kids. Cyberbullying.us, it's an American resource, but they have plenty of resources there for teachers. They have an educator section to their website. There's a lot of mental health research out there and resources online. Certainly Kids Help Phone, youthsuicide.ca are great resources. And there are mental health effects, of course, to cyberbullying. And then at the bottom, their text messaging language. Some of those acronyms and short forms can be very difficult to understand or to keep up with. So those websites are updated constantly, and they explain what those various short forms or acronyms mean. The O stands for Oversee Digital Communications, and this is something that might be worth mentioning to parents if you are having a conversation about how they can protect their children online. Online Family Norton is a parental monitoring program. It allows parents to set limits for their children as to what websites they can see, how long they can be on the internet, how long they can be on the computer. It's a very, very effective and powerful resource. They can create different accounts for different children. So if children are different ages, they can have different restrictions placed on them. And it also allows parents to monitor all of this remotely because it's a web-based program. If people are using Windows 8 now, the newest operating system from Microsoft, it has a family safety program built into it, so a parental monitoring program built into it that's very effective and mimics or mirrors some of the features of online Family Norton. And now most cell phones and smartphones also allow you to set restrictions. So iPhones, for example, allow parents to log in with a password and restrict what their children can see and do online. So by going to Settings and then General and then Restrictions, parents can turn on restrictions on their children's cell phone. So for example, they can turn off their children's access or ability to show their location to other people. They can turn off their children's ability to download apps, for example, or install apps. So parents would have to go in and do those if their children want them. But it's a great way of keeping young people safe on cell phones, and much, much more information about these things and about digital safety is available on protectchildren.ca. It's a Canadian government website from the Canadian Centre for Child Protection, and there are many wonderful resources on that website. The T stands for Tips for Digital Harassment. So again, many teachers are familiar with these, but these are just suggestions we provide students with for what to do if they are being cyberbullied or harassed in an electronic environment. The first is stop or leave. Get out of the area. You don't have to be there. Do not respond. That's what the bully wants. Don't give them that satisfaction. Save and print everything. The one nice thing about cyberbullying is that there's a record of it there. There is evidence, and that can greatly help the police and school administrators in their investigations. We always encourage them to tell a trusted adult. Block the sender. Social media accounts and platforms always allow people to block other users, so take advantage of those features. They never know that they've been blocked. Check your own settings to make sure they're nice and secure. We encourage young people to change their number and email if they have to, if it gets to that point. It's not that hard to change an email address, and cell phone providers in Canada will change phone numbers for free if they know it's because of cyberbullying. We encourage young people to know those privacy policies and terms of use policies on websites. We all tend to just skip over them and agree to them without really thinking about them, but most websites do prohibit bullying, and those policies educate us and teach us about what to do if we are bullied. Of course, meet with school officials. We really want young people to do that. We want them to report it on websites as well. Facebook, you can report bullying, for example, right on the site, and they'll investigate all incidents. And if it is serious enough, involve the police. The E stands for Educate and Evaluate. These are a few websites that are very good and help young people understand whether or not they are crossing a line. A Thin Line, for example, is by MTV, and on that young people can go on and take a quick quiz. And it tells them whether their behavior is controlling or caring, or whether they've crossed their digital line. And what's great about it is it provides them with suggestions about how to change their behavior if it is found that they are crossing that line. That's Not Cool is similar. TextEd has a lot of information about texting and cell phone safety. Media Smarts has wonderful lessons for educators, free lesson plans, as does Common Sense Media around these issues. And Mobile Safety has to do with cell phone safety. The C stands for Check Appropriateness. We certainly want parents to be monitoring their kids' online behaviors the same ways they do their offline behaviors, but also teachers as well. These are some safe websites to use in the classroom. Discovery Kids has a great deal of information on science and fun and games, and it's a safe website for especially younger students to use. TeacherTube is similar to YouTube, but much more educational. ThinkMTV is a social networking website by MTV that encourages young people to become involved in social justice issues and causes. And WeDay is very similar to that, and WeDay.com has a lot of great information and tools and resources for young people to become involved in social issues. So what a lot of these sites are doing are encouraging young people to become more active producers of knowledge rather than passive consumers. And lastly, the T, the final T, stands for take control. So given the importance of social networking websites, it's important for young people to take control of those sites and use their settings appropriately and be aware of what they're putting out there. Facebook is far and away the most popular social networking site in the world. As I said, it has over 1 billion active users now. One thing that's important to know is the banner picture. So not the profile picture, but that bigger picture that is at the top of people's profile is always public. We cannot hide that from anybody. So we have to be careful, and young people have to be aware of what they're putting out there and what that picture says about them. It shouldn't be a picture of themselves. It certainly shouldn't be a picture of them with their pot stash or drinking or anything like that. Generic pictures are the best. There's something on there called an activity log or timeline review, and that allows users to agree to things being posted to their profile before it actually shows up there. So turning those on gives us more control over our content. Redesigns and past posts, there's a setting in the Facebook settings where we can just quickly click to update our current settings to all of our past posts. So if we change our settings to make them more restrictive, by clicking that button, it'll update settings for all of the posts we've ever made on Facebook. But one thing to be aware of is that every time Facebook redesigns the website, our settings can revert back to Facebook's recommended ones. This has happened to people around the office here where Facebook's made a change to how it looks, and their settings go back to Facebook's recommended ones, which aren't that effective. So if you notice a change to how Facebook looks, go in, check your settings, and make sure everything's still okay. And we always encourage people to change their privacy settings online rather than on their phone. It's easier to do it online. It's faster, and that tends to make us choose safer settings because we can see them all and choose the best ones rather than trying to do it very quickly on our cell phone. So as you know, teachers are professionals, mentors, and educators. You are absolutely teaching the digital generation, and that brings up issues that teachers didn't have to deal with just a short time ago. One thing that's important to consider is your student's digital footprint and your own digital footprint. So the digital footprint refers to what is out there about us in the electronic world. For young people, this certainly affects their job prospects, their education prospects. College admissions officers and employers check people's internet presence, their digital footprint, before they offer them admission or before they hire them. So these things are important to be aware of, but it's also important to be aware of as a professional. You want things out there that are positive and that reflect what you want them to reflect. So it's important to Google yourself every once in a while, see what's out there about you, and if you see something you don't like, take steps to address it and do what you can to put positive messages out there about you. And we can also use media effectively in the classroom. As I said, young people tend to mirror what they see others doing. So if you use it effectively and appropriately and powerfully in the classroom, that can help young people use it effectively and appropriately as well. These are just a couple of possible suggestions about using technology in the classroom. Most teachers are starting to use technology more and more, and many of you probably use it quite often and very effectively. But try to balance tech time and non-tech time. It's certainly good to have that technology to engage students, and it's nice to have some downtime from it as well. Know what tools are out there for you to use, and model effective usage. So, visiting appropriate websites and safe websites and educational websites and ones that are informative and involve us and young people in positive and powerful causes are always a good idea. Intentionally use technology. So what we mean by that is use it with a purpose in mind, not just to use it or not just because it's easy to use or it's an easy way of satisfying students. And explicitly link the use of technology with a particular skill set. So these are a few links to free lesson plans and unit plans for teachers. I do apologize, we just launched a new website for the 4th hour, so those first two, our website is youthrelationships.org, but those first two links are incorrect, but maybe, Louise, if you can add the correct link in there. These resources are still on there. For the Canadian Women's Foundation, we've developed resources and lesson plans for students in grades 9 to 12. Thank you for posting that, Louise. There are other resources for teachers as well on our website, so please do check it out. But for grade 9 to 12 students, we have lesson plans on the representation of youth in media. For the Ministry of Education, we've developed lesson plans around the impact of media violence on children and adolescents, and there are lesson plans for students all the way from JK to 12. For the RCMP, we've developed lesson plans on bullying and cyberbullying, and those are available off of their website. And then Common Sense Media and Media Smarts, we're just big fans of those websites, quite honestly, and they have wonderful, wonderful lesson plans, free lesson plans, I should add, for teachers. So if you want to discuss these issues more with your students, there are many wonderful resources out there to help teachers. So I think with that, that's about all I have. So again, I'd like to thank you very much for taking the time to join us tonight and for spending some of your own time on these issues. They're so important, and I'm really glad to see that so many people turned out tonight. It's just such an important thing to know about and to understand. So thank you again for joining us. And with that, I'd love to open it up to questions and see if anybody has anything that they'd like to know a little bit more about. And you can feel free to use the mic if you have one, or to just type questions into the box.
While people think about that a little bit, Ryan, I was thinking, when you were talking about using technology intentionally and actually using and being aware and modeling in the classroom, I was kind of thinking of the many times where, we can feel like our students or our children are more savvy and more knowledgeable about technology than we are, and we often forget that just because they know about this app or know how to use it doesn't mean that they know how to use it well and safely, and that it certainly brings back the responsibility to us to be as aware of those issues so that we can help them become aware of it. Go ahead, Shweta.
That's a really good point, actually, if I can just touch on it very quickly. Young people understand how to use the technology maybe, but we as adults understand the social relationships behind the technology, and that's what they often don't understand. And that's really where you can come in. You don't have to know how it works or understand the background to it all and the technological side of it, but you can still be so helpful to them. So thanks for mentioning that, Louise. Sorry, please go ahead.
My question is, it's not a question, but my dilemma, as I hear this presentation is related to, yes, there's digital harassment, but then there's the whole train of thought on digital citizenship. So one of the slides when it says avoid posting videos and avoid posting pictures, in Peel we've gone really right, like head down into this whole social media thing, and whether it's teachers, whether it's staff members, we are encouraged to have Twitter accounts where we are posting pictures and videos of our students as well as on YouTube and stuff. So it kind of contradicts that whole thing, and I'm not saying contradicts rather, but it challenges. Yes, we need to. So I'm trying to think. Digital harassment is there, but then there's digital citizenship. That if we teach our kids to be responsible digital citizens, then they won't be harassed digitally. But to avoid posting pictures and videos, we are doing it. So I'm going to stop talking at this point right now.
No, that's a fantastic point, and it is certainly a balancing act. I suppose one of the differences is between adults doing it and young people doing it, whereas adults can understand the potential consequences of their behavior and young people may not. But it's also just about carefully thinking about what we're putting out there. So, you know, there are pictures that should be posted, and there is content that should be posted. And in fact, one way of building your own professional digital footprint is by being on social media. And that's a great way of posting positive content. And you're absolutely right. It is a balancing act, but it is certainly about teaching young people how to post things safely and smartly as well. Please go ahead again.
I'll jump in again. I do understand what Shweta is saying about, you know, as you'd said, Ryan, so many schools and boards have switched to wireless networks and are encouraging things like BYOD, where students have their own devices. They're encouraged to use them in an educational context and to develop and create and learn through a lot of these digital media. And I just had put a comment down there in the chat that, you know, these opportunities, as much as we want to safeguard them and teach them about limits they should put on them, that's also kind of defining the parameters for that appropriate and safe use of, you know, that positive zone in there where they can really explore and share themselves in a way that, you know, really isn't going to come back to haunt them in any way that is a positive presence, that digital footprint, as you said, you know, when they can look in the past and say, oh, that was okay, or look, I look kind of funny in grade 3 reading that story on YouTube, but that's, you know, not quite the same as some of the nature of the other things that you might be referring to.
Absolutely. That's such an important point, and your point about modeling appropriate use is right on. You know, there are wonderful ways to use it and to teach young people how to use it safely, and that's certainly one of them.
I know that a lot of the I'm just thinking about the blurry line that comes for students and for educators when some of the things that students used to just do in their after-school time, you know, obviously come into their daytime hours at school. Can you comment on maybe some of the protocols, you know, when students are encouraged to tell an adult, you know, is there certain things that or approaches or responses that teachers can make when a student does come forward with that to help, you know, create those opportunities for learning?
Well, it's a hard question for me to answer because I'm not a teacher. I wish Shanna was here. She'd know more about that. The one thing I would say, which goes for parents, teachers, any adult that a young person does report to, take them seriously. They've trusted you. It is a huge deal. It's a really, really big deal for them to report this to you and to tell you what's going on in their lives around bullying and cyberbullying. So take them seriously. Do what you can to help them. You know, even if you don't believe them, make it seem in that moment like you really do believe them. You know, it's just so important that they know that they're being taken seriously. Because, you know, we want young people to report bullying to us. We don't want them to deal with it on their own. And if they don't feel like they're taken seriously, they're not going to report it the next time. So support them however you can. Again, you don't have to have all the answers, but just listen to them and listen to their concerns. But I really can't comment too much on specific policies or protocols, unfortunately. But you know, perhaps some of the others on here might be able to speak to those issues.
That was perfect, Ryan. I know that there may be some variation from board to board, usually sets those policies, and so teachers should definitely make sure that they're familiar with those as well. Brittany, Joanna, Shweta, do you have any comments on that? All right, yes, definitely good point, and an area that, you know, teachers can grow their learning and awareness. It was very interesting that was it 4%, Ryan? That is the percentage of bullying incidents that a teacher might observe.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so we'll make the most of that percentage then.
Yes, and that's why we need to encourage them to report it and to take them seriously when they do. You know, your odds of seeing it they're very small. So, you know, hopefully they'll tell us.
Yeah, absolutely. And when we create that safe culture where they feel that someone will take them seriously, they will be more likely to report, or at least it's going to get around to one of the students is going to hear about it who is comfortable reporting. And then if they feel that some action will follow, then that's a good thing.
Absolutely.
But I see our time is now at 9, and Brittany, I see you've got a comment down there, so I think we'll let Ryan read that, and I'm going to advance this slide, and if someone can tell me whether you see the thank you screen, that'll let me know whether or not I need to go take another screenshot for you. You do see the thank you screen. Perfect. Oh, good, Shweta. I'm so glad you think that the time flies. That's important. Okay, so thank you all for participating tonight, and Ryan, thank you so much for a very thorough presentation on all those aspects of digital harassment, social networking, and online safety. There's certainly a lot of things in there that I hadn't thought of that I will be thinking of now and in the future. And that link right in the center of the screen, folks, is our feedback survey link, and I will drop that in the chat as well. And we really do appreciate when you fill out that quick little 1-minute form and let us know not just how we did tonight, but how our whole process is and the technology and those different things. And then our second link down there is, of course, our calendar of upcoming events. Definitely look and see what else is coming up for OTF Connects that you're interested in. Tell your colleagues about it. Next week we have, let me flip ahead to the calendar myself. Well, actually tomorrow night we have a session with Mally Beckley on Global Projects 101. So one of the links that Ryan had put up there about a safe place for students to share online was taking it global, or taking IT global. And that is one of the projects that Mally has used in her classroom. And she works with iEarn, and so tomorrow night's presentation deals with taking projects like that and making it work in the classroom. And so that's a really excellent venue where, you know, all of these things kind of interconnect, where you've got teacher modeling as well as some social networking and digital media and students learning together. And then next week we've got some critical thinking and making student thinking visible with Brenda Sherry and Peter Skillen, and lots more after that. So please do take a look at the calendar. We also have another session with Ryan and hopefully Shanna as well on, maybe I better check that date. That is going to be on, it's towards the end of, oh, I should have had that date ready. Where is it?
It's in April,
oh, here it is, April 9th, Coming of Age in the Digital Era. And I'm going to drop that link in the chat right now so that you can take a look at that. That's going to certainly delve into a lot of related areas with tonight's session. So thank you all again. I'm going to sign off now, and if you have any other follow-up questions or anything like that, don't hesitate to get in touch either through us at OTF or contacting the Fourth Hour folks directly as well. Thanks again, everyone. We'll see you soon.